Alright everybody, welcome to the channel and welcome to a one of a 6-part series for Wartales, where I'm kind of going to just really go over and talk about all of the classes, kind of ways how to play them, or how I play them at least, best ways to use them both inside of the fighting map and then on the world map, and their professions, and just a few little things here and there to try to help direct how you want to be using each of the different classes in the best way that works for me. Whenever I play on the hardest difficulty, and this is usually what I do as just a staple to make it so it works as best as I can. Now obviously there'll be other ways that you can go about these classes, how you can use them, how you build them, what stats you go on, so on and so forth. Obviously it's up to you how you want to use them, but if you're looking for a way that for sure works and you can kind of build your own build around, this is going to be one of the 6 videos that'll help you. So with that being said, we can just go ahead and get into the first one. Looking at a setup here, we can go ahead and look at that we have a ranger. Now a ranger is going to be usually one of your most, if not your most, active character on the map in terms of movement. He's going to be doing a lot of damage, and he benefits the most from attacking enemies from behind and getting critical hits. Now when we go and we look at their skills, which will be here soon, you can see that you can kind of build him as a more utility and have him help people disengage. But the ranger does an incredible amount of damage, and it's really, really good to utilize that damage. So we can't change their weapon, so they're just going to have the one-handed dagger. For utility, you can choose a few different ones. You can use run, which disengages, which can be really good. If your ranger ever gets in melee combat, you are in a tough spot. He does far less damage because he's not hitting anybody in the back. He is locked into combat, so he can't move, which is what you're going to build a lot of him around, is being able to move. So having this is going to make it so if he ever does get caught, he can leave without getting an attack of opportunity on him. So it also saves his HP. Wrath is another really, really good one. As I said, you are going to be doing a lot of damage. So having another ability that does more damage is good. On top of that, if he does get the kill with Wrath, his next attack is going to do 50% more damage. If you include that with you're going to be attacking from behind, you're probably going to be able to get a crit off. It's a huge, huge amount of damage. So it's something really, really good to use as well. You can go first aid. First aid isn't bad on him. Again, he's going to be moving around a lot. He's going to be able to basically run into every teammate. He could get poison, or a teammate might get poison or fire on them from different units, so it could be helpful to have this too. Again, it's up to you if you want to use this. In other videos I'll be going over who does use first aid, so I wouldn't put it on my ranger, but if you really want to, you can. And then that's all we have. The other thing I want to mention is if you start in Tiltron, you are going to find a ranger relatively early on. I would not recommend picking a start that starts with a ranger, because you'll be able to find one very early. You'll be able to have him in your group. You'll have 5 people. Having 5 people and 2 of them be rangers is not as great as you would think. It's a lot of damage, but they get locked down. They're not tanky. They wear light armor. They get hurt a lot. It's going to be going through a lot of health potions, a lot of repair kits. It's just an awkward thing. So I wouldn't start with a ranger, but you can do what you want to. As for traits, again, a lot of them work. I wouldn't do or you could do bloodthirsty. I wouldn't do brawny. I would not do strong. Strong is the absolute worst one to go. Nimble is good. Hardworking is fine. Clever. All these ones are okay. I wouldn't do thick skin either. But with your ranger, they're going to be probably one of your highest damage dealing ones. So quick would be really, really good. Nimble would be good, and bloodthirsty would be good as well, which those would be the ones that I would go for as my main ones to go for. Again, I'm not going to do these ones because I don't want to have that negative trait. It's just not worth having, a 3% crit, having that, and then also having to pay extra gold every rest. So that's just my opinion. Obviously you can do what you want, but this is how I would probably have mine set up. I would have the stab, I would have wrath, and I would have nimble in mine. Alright, and here now we have our cutthroat, the deceitful, our ranger. Now, the Ranger is going to be, as I said, a really, really high damage dealer. And just to give you an idea of why, is because we have a weapon like this. Every single time he attacks, he gains 3 stacks of rage, which, theoretically, increases his damage by 15%. Now, this only works with your very basic attack right here, Slaughter, but this damage bonus that you get goes to your other abilities. And we'll look at those abilities here, but this just gives you an idea of how much damage you can truly do with him. With this being said, before we go look at his actual skills that we're going to get, you will have the option to eventually appoint a captain. Now, captain gives you the galvanized troops, which means every ally in the area gives you 1 extra valor point. Now, you can only use this once in an encounter, and it's a 4-meter range. Now, this is really good for a couple of different reasons. First and foremost is he's got the most movement speed, or normally will have the most movement on your team. You'll be able to put him around allies very easily. If, people are really spread out, you'll be able to get him in between as the biggest clump of them as you can, be able to use this galvanize, and then still be able to get to the enemy to attack. The next thing is your trait, Instinctive Throw, which we will go ahead and start looking at here. So, the first thing is, when you look at your specialization, is your level 2 is you get some passives. So, you can have Audacity, which is every time you end your turn next to an enemy and not engaged, you gain 1 Valor. Now, that's okay. You're not going to often be ending turns next to enemies, not engaged. I mean, it does happen, obviously, and with the Ranger, it's probably more often than the other classes, but it's still just a weird concept to work with. Then you have Valorous Support, which every time your unit ends their turn next to an ally and not engaged in combat, you gain 1, which can happen, but once again, it's not as often. The best one is Valorous Victory. Every time you kill an enemy, you gain 1 Valor point. Now, your Ranger here is going to be having a lot of attacks, doing a lot of damage, and possibly killing multiple enemies every turn. Now, with Support and Audacity, you get 1 Valor a turn. With Victory, you can get up to 3, sometimes even 4 Valor a turn, depending on how you have it built. Just because you are going to have so many different attacks, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit here. Now, when we go look at kind of the tree that we're going down, you have the first one here, Cutthroat. Now, what this does is you deal 10 to 13 damage to the target. And if you're ambushed, you perform 2 additional attacks, which basically means if you're standing directly behind the enemy, you'll attack them 3 times. Now, first off, 3 times, and these hits can crit, and because it's an ambush, it's like a 30% extra bonus, plus this 22%. Look at that. It's over 50% chance for every attack. So at least one of the attacks will crit. So that's just going to give you huge damage and probably proc Valorous Victory. So it costs 2 Valor, but you're probably getting it back. And then on top of that, if you use Galvanized Troops, you're for sure going to be breaking even with this on your first time that you use it. Now the next one you have is Strategist. Now what Strategist does is you throw a smoke screen down, and it forces enemies engaged in the area to disengage. And then all your teammates get to have an attack of opportunity if they are engaged with it. Now this can be good. It's a very, very heavy utility-based one. You're forcing your teammates to disengage, where if you have a lot of allies with the thing where anytime they engage an enemy, they gain a Valor point, going this could be good. However, I think Cutthroat is so good that you just go that every time, and then if you have a second Ranger, you can go ahead and pull up Smokescreen, and then it's not that bad. But otherwise, I just feel like Cutthroat is just too good to have. Then you have Poisoner. Apply 3 poisons to all units in the area, and every time somebody gets hit with poison, they lose 5% of their HP. So basically, when an enemy ends their turn, they'll lose 15% of their max HP, and then you can keep stacking that. Now, if you're fighting just massive groups, this obviously can start stacking up a lot of damage, and that could work in that, but in any other situation, it's just not as good. Now, there are weapons that will make it where you can automatically crit if enemies are poisoned, so this could be good, but again, Poisoner is kind of a utility-based skill to have. So if you're going for how I like to play the Ranger and have the Ranger be my highest damage dealer, Cutthroat is the way to go. But if you feel like you want somebody else to be your main carry and you want your ranger to help them, strategist or poisoner are definitely good alternatives. And then finally, you have the assassin. Now, you don't unlock this one right away. You actually have to go into the area north of Tiltrin, into Vertruse, and in the kind of northeast corner of the map, there's Smots Arena. If you beat Smots Arena, you can go back to near the border to a mill, and you can talk to somebody there, and he will give you the assassin tree. Now, what this does is this inflicts 17 to 22 damage, and that scales based on what your actual damage is, and applies bleeding. If the target is already bleeding, the damage is doubled. Now, bleeding makes it so you lose 20% of your health. So that's just a lot of damage right then and there. And again, there are certain weapons that will be able to crit or knock back or something if an enemy is bleeding, or other ones that, like, if an enemy is bleeding, they cause poison for that. So this definitely can work. You would have to reskill in order to get this, because it's not going to happen right away. You're going to get level 3 before you can beat the arena. I honestly don't think that you could beat the arena and be under level 3. I just don't think it's possible. It's pretty strong over there. So you'd have to re-specialize and learn this, and it's not a bad one, but again, I already have Cutthroat. I'm happy with that, so I stick with that. After this here, we have Poison Weapon. Every time this unit attacks from behind, you apply 2 poison. Now, if you were going to do something where, you're throwing down Poison Vial, and you have this, and you attack from behind, again, however you play the Ranger, you're going to be attacking from behind. So, this could really, really stack up. If you throw down your Vial, and then you attack an enemy, you have 5 poison. You're going to attack the enemy, and then when they end their turn, they're going to lose 25, a quarter of their HP. Right then and there. That does a lot of damage. That's an obscene amount of damage. But with that being said, I still think that Cutthroat does a little bit more. It's just ultimately up to you. Going the poison build is not a bad build. It definitely will do its job. It's just I prefer to go a different build is all. I'm not saying that this is bad or this isn't good. It's just I prefer to do a different one. In my opinion, the best one here is Instinctive Throw. After you use a skill, you can deal 7 damage to the closest enemy within 4 meters. So this is just a really, really good skill, because basically how my playthrough will start, I'll walk up to enemy or allies, I'll use Galvanized Troops, gain a bunch of Valor points, and throw a dagger. Then I'll walk up to an enemy, and I will attack with my sword, and get the 15% rage, and throw a dagger. Then I'll do Cutthroat, and attack 3 more times, and then throw a dagger. And then on top of that, even if I wanted to, I could use either heal or I could use run or something like that, and then throw another dagger. So every turn I'm throwing, like 3 to 5 daggers, depending on what I have, which is crazy. So 21 to, up to 40 damage it's a lot of damage that can come out. So this is really, really good, and this is only going to scale as you go up. Now, when you first look at it and it's only a couple damage, you're like, okay, but you're fighting weaker enemies. If you look at an enemy and you're like, okay, you can apply 2 stacks of poison, or right now, you can do an extra 35 damage. The 35 damage, it stacks up pretty quickly. Like, that's quite a bit. So, again, it's up to you, but Instinctive Throw is really, really good. Now you have Deadly Contract. At the start of each round, applies fragility, well, I don't know how to say it, whatever, to the closest enemy for 1 round. Now, you make a fragile, you do a little bit more damage. It definitely can be something, but it's just, it's weird. I don't know. It definitely is a utility-based one, and it definitely can work, but the other 2 I just like more. Obviously, if you have multiple different rangers, then this is good. But if you're like me and you only use 1 ranger, then it's just not quite as good. But it's not bad. And then you have the one that you unlock with Assassin. Every time a unit attacks a bleeding or burning or poisoned unit, the attack also applies 1 fever, which means that they take an extra 10% damage. Now, this works well with the Assassin trait, just because you're going to apply bleeding, and it's going to, basically the assassin trait is focused on finding one person and making sure that person dies as quickly as possible, which definitely, I mean, it can work. It's not bad by any means. If I had a second ranger, which I might get pretty soon here in this playthrough, I might go this full assassin build and kind of see how it feels. Just because I think you really do start putting out a lot of damage. So if you go the assassin build, I think you have to go everything assassin, and then it'll work out really, really well. But again, I just think that this instinctive throw is just really, really good. Next, we have the level 8. We have explosive gas. Double the poison of all units in the area at the start of the turn. I mean, you have to ready it, so you don't use it right away. You use it, and then your next turn it activates it. Which, I mean, if we're already stacking up all these other poisons, this is a lot of poison damage. This is a lot. However, to get this going, you basically have to get 4 Valor points in here and like 2 to 3 turns for it to fully work. Now, that's kind of setting up a lot. Now, it's going to do a crazy amount of damage. We already talked about how this applies 3 poison, how this does 2, so you're at 5. You double it, okay, you're at 10. When this enemy ends the turn, they're going to lose half of their HP. Just straight up half of it. Now, if you do that full setup, it's pretty much, by the time you get this setup off, half HP, that'll kill them. They should just die. Now, that's good, but again, there's a lot of setup for it. It's a little bit of a higher skill cap, in a sense, where you have to make sure that you have people positioned properly, because you just can't just run a ranger in the middle of combat and just start doing this. Like, you have to have people working around with them helping. So, it definitely can work. It's a lot of Valor points, but I mean, again, it does work. Then you have Low Blow. Applies Blackout to all enemies in the area. Has a 50% chance to miss their next attack. This one's just pretty good. This one works pretty well with kind of all of them almost. Obviously, it doesn't work as well with Poisoner because you have this one, but with Strategist, you can basically force the enemies to disengage, and then you get a free attack. And then you can do this to make it so there's a possibility that they miss their next attack. So that one, I mean, that's really, really strong. So that definitely can work. Damage of attacks from behind increased by 20%. Obviously, I'm going to be going for this one because my whole ranger build on this character is attacking enemies from behind. 20% is an obscene amount of damage. On top of that, you stack that with my fury that I'm already getting 15% every turn. Every attack is basically doing 35% more damage. So it's a lot of damage. Again, these percents, 20% is a lot, obviously. You look at it on its own, maybe you don't think anything of it. But when you start building into that one thing and funneling towards it, it does become a lot of damage really, really quickly. Then, of course, we have the other assassin one. Disengages at the end of their turn. So this is really good because then you don't have to have run. But again, you have to wait kind of long before you get the assassin. You probably won't have to re-specialize in it because, obviously, I've done the arena and I'm in the next area and I'm only level 6. So, this is just a good skill to have. It makes it so you don't have to use run, you don't have to waste a Valor point. It's just helpful. However, again, having this one kind of means that you're thinking that you're going to be set up to having them engaged in melee, which is not good because as the assassin you want to be attacking from behind. Or not the assassin, but as the ranger. So this one, it's a good failsafe, but if you play properly, you don't need that failsafe. So it would be better to go cold-blooded, then low blow, and then if you really wanted to, explosive gas. Then your level 10 tree is you have secondary weapon. Get a different dagger. Now, this one's not bad because you could have, like the one that I have, right? You could attack and have that rage bonus, or you could switch and you could have that poison one, if you want to do a bunch of poison damage. So, it could work. It's definitely not bad. Anticipation. When the unit is attacked, they have a 50% chance to not become engaged and to deal an attack of opportunity. So again, it's a little bit of a gamble one, but basically an enemy attacks you and there's a 50% chance that they don't actually engage with you, so you can still run around and you attack them. Again, my ranger, I don't get him in melee a lot. I attack from behind and then I move him out of the fight. So this one is not really for me, but if you feel like, by the time you get to level 10 and you have a huge party like this, everybody might just be fighting. So this one might not be too bad of one to have. And then you have Unstoppable. This unit becomes unstoppable and can pass through the enemy ranks. So you can just run through. So basically your movement, 14 movement becomes just that much better. You can just run through people instead of having to run around them, which, in my opinion, is really, really, really good. Because if I'm running through somebody, I'm moving like 3 meters. If I have to run around them, that changes to like 7 or 8 meters, or even more depending on how big of a clump it is. This Unstoppable basically ensures that you will always get to behind the enemy that you want to and attack them that turn without having to kind of manage and attack somebody else and wait or whatever it might be. So obviously I do think all 3 of these skills are pretty good. However, I'm going to go Unstoppable once I get to that point, just because I feel like it's just a better one to have, and it's going to fit the playstyle of my Ranger specifically, our Captain Nick, a little bit better. And then finally, we go ahead and we look at professions. Now, because he's my main damage dealer, I want him to do more damage. So obviously there's 2 dexterity ones I could use. I don't think you go any of the ones with constitution or strength, so that take out these 4 right here, and you're left with 5. Critical hit, really, really good. 2 willpower ones, which are okay, but once you hit 12 willpower, you can go more because it does help with your critical hit, but 12 is like the key. Every single unit should have 12 willpower, or else you're griefing. Just because then when they get knocked down, they get back up again. So that's basically what you want to go with. So I really use these ones for just like extra things, right? Like my spearmen and stuff like that. But I'll talk about that more in a different video. I think Alchemist and Thief are the best 2. And then you could argue Tinkerer as well. I think Alchemist and Tinkerer are the 2 best ones to have. Again, it's really up to you how you want to do this with these. Alchemist is really, really good one to have, just because you want to be able to make potions with the apothecary. And a ranger is kind of a staple. You need a ranger. So I put them together. You need a ranger, you need an alchemist. You put them together and you've got this really, really strong unit. So this is kind of how I go with it. I make him an alchemist, and then I just go full in on damage build with my ranger and have him pretty much clean up and kill everybody. And that's how I play my ranger for Wartales.